Peace. What's going on? This is Big Money Walt, and in today's video, I want to give my perspective on a topic related to boxing. So we're going to touch the hot potato of the upcoming super fight between Devin the Dream Haney and Brian Norman Jr., a.k.a. B. Norm the Storm, a.k.a. The Assassin Part 2. But more importantly, VADA testing, as it pertains to their upcoming bout. So let's break it down. First, let's meet the fighters. And in this corner, we got Devin the Dream Haney, former undisputed lightweight champion and current contender in the welterweight division, challenging the current, reigning, and defending WBO welterweight champion of the world, Brian Norman Jr., a.k.a. The Assassin Part 2. Now, this marks the second defense of his belt at 147, putting Dev's slick defensive style against Brian's aggressive pressure and explosive power. So we got a technician with high ring IQ and movement against a classic boxer puncher. Since it was announced, these two have kept the heat cranked up on the contest taking place on November 22nd at Riyadh season in Saudi Arabia, being put on by His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh, a.k.a. No Tune-Up Turk. Surprisingly, it isn't the trash talk, security crash-outs, or face-offs that give this fight the most buzz. It's actually all centered around the drug testing that's being carried out by VADA. What is VADA? Well, VADA is the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association, and it's a non-profit organization founded in 2011 to promote clean sport in boxing and mixed martial arts. Led by Dr. Margaret Goodman, a former Nevada State Athletic Commission ringside physician, VADA offers independent, year-round drug testing programs that go beyond what most athletic commissions require. VADA specializes in unannounced random testing for performance-enhancing drugs, or PEDs, out-of-competition testing, which makes up about 60% of their work, the use of WADA, a.k.a. World Anti-Doping Agency, accredited labs, and certified doping control officers, or DCOs. They also provide education and outreach, helping athletes understand the risks of PEDs and how to train clean. Unlike some regulatory bodies, VADA operates without administrative fees and doesn't pay its board members, emphasizing transparency and integrity. Their testing has led to several high-profile busts and have become a gold standard for fighters who want to prove they're competing clean. Okay, but not everyone is a dirty fighter, so why sign up for VADA? Because both Devin Haney and Brian Norman Jr. represent a new generation of fighters who've embraced transparency and accountability in the ring. By participating in VADA testing, they send a clear message: greatness doesn't need shortcuts. In an era where performance-enhancing drugs have clouded legacies, these athletes are proving that discipline, talent, and clean competition still define true champions. Given that Dev has dealt with the aftermath of the Ryan Garcia fight, which exposed that his opponent tested positive for ostarine and nandrolone, he decided to opt into 24/7, 365-style drug testing as part of a twofold effort: to get Ryan Garcia, who he was set to rematch, back to the negotiation table on equal footing, and to set the tone for all professional athletes who take competition in their sport seriously. In my opinion, when you fight at the highest level, you should be giving us the fights we want to see, with an emphasis on being a clean fighter that's willing to test at the drop of a hat, if need be, so you leave no question as to the value of your performance in the ring. With VADA testing already included in the 8-week camp leading up to this fight for both fighters, we're getting the best of both worlds. The in-camp testing is covered by the promoter of record for the card, which is Queensberry Promotions. However, at Bill and Devin's request, they've also negotiated for an additional period of extended testing, also through VADA, that would be paid for by Bill Haney himself. The Normans agreed to more testing since they have nothing to hide and wanted to get started with it on August 1st after getting back from vacation. But the Haneys wanted it to begin immediately after signing the contract on July 12th. If you know Bill, he wasn't going to let it slide. So he did what Bill does and got us all looking and listening to see what was going to happen next. With all this playing out publicly on multiple platforms and a little back and forth between the camps, the assassin decided to register earlier than when he was going to, keeping everything above board. Now, with all that, you might ask, why do we need extended testing? You just said they have 8 weeks of testing under the promotion company in Turkey to make sure it's a clean fight. Well, if I had to guess, the Haneys feel there's too big a time frame between now and the fight, which could potentially represent an opportunity to cycle on and off PEDs. While I don't think they believe this to be the case with Brian Jr., I do believe that this is being done to set the tone, so to speak, for anyone else who they step in the ring with for the remainder of his career. They want their current and all future opponents to know that they're going to have to prove they don't have any tricks up their sleeve, especially if they aren't part of the 365 program like the Haneys are. Since Devin is in 365 style testing, he's been tested regularly all year and will continue to be. As far as the assassin, so far he's been tested ever since he signed up, doing what's required, making himself available to the DCOs being sent by VADA, even throughout his vacation. Why is all this important? Well, because in a sport where a single punch can declare a winner and catapult a fighter into stardom, or leave one physically injured for life, or have his life taken away, testing provides a view through the looking glass, a snapshot of these athletes' health and fitness before they compete. It provides a picture that highlights the transparency needed to keep an even playing field in what is otherwise known as a blood sport. And if that blood is good enough to be spilled, it should be okay to test as well. Being transparent with the results of those tests is how the fighters, their opponents, and most importantly, the public, get to stay informed. Which brings us to Victor Conte, one of the most polarizing figures in the world of anti-doping and the world of boxing, being a strong advocate on behalf of both. Now, Victor is another hot potato, and although there's an endless conversation about him spanning the Balco scandal up to how and when he chooses to be vocal about the current landscape of drugs in the sport, today, we need only focus on his stance that any and all test results should be released as they become available by VADA. Although a majority of the most high-level fighters and promoters agree to include testing, having the same anti-doping stance as we do, not all promotion companies allow testing results for their fighters to be made public, something he refers to as a muzzle rule. He has always maintained this position and does so on his social media posts almost daily when speaking on the topic. When it comes to Victor's response to the muzzle rule, I tend to agree, especially if we intend to push for a clean sport. For the promoters who don't oppose it, it can still be a hassle getting these test results out, sometimes taking weeks or even years after a fight. So in the interest of safety, fairness, and time, just let VADA do their job. Besides, it's official when VADA does put out testing updates as opposed to anyone else and leaves little room for doubt. Now, given the recent controversy surrounding the VADA testing results from Bud Crawford, where the documentation included a typo of the date that simply needed to be corrected, some content creators ran with the idea that it was fabricated and not official, then shared it across the internet like a smoking gun that Bud was guilty of PED use, although he has always tested in the past as a clean athlete. This simple mistake led to an uproar of Bud's fans and haters, with one side looking at this as a non-issue or possibly done by a detractor to ruin his image, and the other side drawing the conclusion that this was no clerical error, but the evidence of a poor attempt at a cover-up. That the steroid cheat had fumbled and left a clue for the most discerning internet detectives to catch and hang him out to dry. With that said, I want Bill to see the most transparent way to keep the integrity of any test results posted is to take the advice of Victor Conte and allow VADA to control the initial release of those documents directly to the public. Because a few weeks ago, around the time that both teams were going back and forth about when Brian would register for his testing to begin, I had the opportunity to ask Bill himself when I called into the Boxing Voice. Here's what he said. So my question to you is, since this is on your dime, will you make the results of the testing that you're paying for under VADA for Brian Norman Jr. and your son available to them and to all of us?
Absolutely. That's only fair. That if I get a test, and I know the test results, I'm going to share it with the world.
Okay. Then, to his credit, I've heard that Bill has made the results available, but only through some media outlets, including content creators here on YouTube. This is where I realized my question, as important as it was, fell short of my concern because I didn't ask specifically if he would allow VADA to publish those results. So to that, let me say this. Bill, we appreciate you making this information public in the spirit of transparency, but for argument's sake, we don't want what happened with Bud's paperwork to happen here, especially with so much time between now and the fight. When you give those test results exclusively to content creators to post, although they may be trusted by you, objectively, the public can't verify where the data came from. But if you allow VADA to do it, it's accountable to a designated point of contact, reinforcing the use of a predefined communication pathway. With VADA publishing the test results throughout the lead up to this fight, the responsibility would be on them from now on, then cascade down to whoever you want. And more importantly, Bill, since this is on your dime, you have to be the one to give VADA the green light to post it, which would do two things. You separate yourself and DHP Promotions from the other promoters who contribute to the muzzle rule, and after it's made official, you can repost them yourself, establishing you and Dev being first for the downstream of this valuable intel while making use of your platforms to show the testing. I can't think of a better place for you to do it. Now, as it stands, I applaud Devin taking responsibility and signing up for his own 24/7, 365 year-round testing, as well as the extended testing for this upcoming fight, because transparency in the sport is paramount, and his commitment to being a clean competitor, even when he's off the clock, speaks volumes. And if you, Dev, Brian Norman Sr., and Brian Norman Jr. follow suit, it will reinforce the word through your collective channels and supporting outlets, putting your best foot forward and as the best way to show we have a clean fight. All right, man. Peace.